Good morning from WKYT News. I'm Bill Bryant. We welcome you to Kentucky Newsmakers, and we have a lot to discuss today. We begin with Kentucky Secretary of State Michael Adams joining us. With all the ads you see running on TV or coming across your phone, you might think this is an election year in Kentucky, but it's not. But next year will be, and next year is creeping into this year because it is a big one. 2026 will be a major year on the ballot box. Kentuckians elect a new U.S. Senator, members of Congress, the state legislature, local, city, county, and judicial officials. Before it's over, Kentuckians may also be voting on state constitutional amendments. So a big year again is just around the corner. Secretary Adams, thanks for coming in. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Bill. Great to be back.
First, some news is that you are releasing Kentucky's voter rolls to the federal government, right?
Yes, the Trump administration has requested, I believe, all of our states to turn over copies of our voter rolls. And before doing that immediately, this is something that I've looked at very closely. I've talked with legal counsel, and our view is that they are entitled to that. In fact, federal law gives any citizen the right to request the voter rolls. We give out the voter rolls to candidates, to parties, to outside groups, and so we're going to share them also with the Trump administration. For the moment, we are not turning over anyone's personal information. They did request that. For the moment, we're holding that back, and we're turning over the public copy of our rolls.
What does that mean in terms of the personal information that you're withholding?
So they requested driver's license numbers. They also requested the last four digits of Social Security numbers. So for the moment, we are not granting that request. We're holding those back, pending a further exchange with attorneys at the U.S. Department of Justice. For us to run our traps, we need to see what they're going to use this for. I don't want to breach our confidentiality of any citizen of Kentucky. So pending that further exchange, for now we're holding that back. But otherwise, we're providing them what they've requested.
With all the ads running and candidates out campaigning, you almost have to remind people there is no November election this year, and candidates really haven't even filed for office yet, right?
That's right. We don't even open, and by law cannot open candidate filing until November 5th. And we expect a line of hundreds and hundreds of people to show up on that first day alone to file for office.
And that filing window starts next month, goes to January 9th.
That's right.
You feel that candidates are chomping at the bit to file?
Yeah, I've already gotten several requests. People want to come in, get a picture when they file, which certainly will accommodate. I want to make sure folks know I'm not in the Capitol anymore. Neither is the governor or the attorney general. We've all moved. We've all relocated. So I'm at 1025 Capitol Center Drive in Frankfort now. We have a special room for filing. We'll have a room where people can do media interviews if they like with any of you who come. But November 5th through January 9th is our filing period for the 2026 elections.
And some file in Frankfort and some file locally, right?
Yeah, if you're filing for a federal office, if you're filing for a statewide candidacy or a multi-county candidacy, then you would file with me. If you're filing for a judgeship or for the legislature, those are state offices. You would file with the Secretary of State. If you're filing locally for a magistrate or county clerk or something, then you would file with the county clerk.
A state representative within one county?
That's a state office, so they would all file with me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you'll be busy.
Yeah, hundreds and
coming
hundreds
up.
Of people.
Why is the window so tight, especially considering that a lot of it comes during the distraction of the holidays?
Yeah, actually, as recently as when I first ran for office in 2019, the window was much longer. It was until, I think, the end of January. And that's been dialed back to now early January. And the thought behind that was there are legislators who, it's believed, don't want to cast tough votes in January because they're watching to see who comes to my office and files against them. And they may incentivize an opponent if they cast a tough vote. So the idea by the General Assembly was to move that filing window backward and leave more of January open earlier, but also cut off earlier. And the idea was that it'll make it easier to make public policy without people peeking over their shoulder.
Well, it used to be it was even late March, and then it was said when they moved it that it took time to prepare the ballot, but clearly there are more political considerations there.
It would be fine with me if they extend that window. I'd be fine with it.
The reason people are seeing ads right now is that so many have filed their paperwork to be able to spend money, so they're doing that. They have formed these committees. What do people need to know about that process if they're going to run for office and raise money?
Well, if you're running for a federal office, you have to file with the Federal Election Commission. And there's a process for that at fec.gov. You can learn all about that. If you're running for a state office or any office that's not federal and is in Kentucky, it could be a local office, it could be nonpartisan office, all of those, then you need to check with the Registry of Election Finance, which is at kref.ky.gov. But if you run for office and you spend more than just a de minimis amount of money, you have to register and report. And people find out who your donors are, who's backing your campaign, and they have a right to know that.
And that's if you're running even for a local office.
For anything whatsoever, even dog catcher.
You say you're seeing an uptick in registration. We know the independent surge continues. Republicans are widening their lead over registered Democrats, it appears, but the Democratic primary now is getting to be crowded as well. So you have two aggressive U.S. Senate primaries coming up at the top of the ballot next year.
Yeah, I'm hopeful this will spark a higher turnout than we've seen recently in 2022 and 2023 when we had statewide races. The turnout was 10 to 15%. It was 29% in 2020 when we had a very competitive U.S. Senate primary between Amy McGrath and Charles Booker. My hope is to see a high turnout in May of 2026. I think we could. If we've got lively primaries on both sides of the Senate race, then that's my hope for sure. But that's still very telling that people like me are hopeful that 3 out of 10 voters will show up to vote to pick our leaders. It would be great if it were higher.
A lot of money is spent in these elections by the candidates, by these outside groups. I mean, is that some form of economic development for the state, or is it?
Well, it will be if Amy McGrath brings another $9 million to invest in our state. That would be bigger than anything I think the governor's announced. That would be a major investment into our economy. To me as a Republican, one of the big questions is, can she raise that kind of money if she's not running against Mitch McConnell? And if she does raise some large amount of money, is she going to raise it just into her campaign, or is it going to go into other committees, like the Democratic Party committees, other left-leaning groups? And if it does, that's a big flashing red light for the Republicans. Because the Republicans, it's easy to get complacent when you feel like you've got a 7-point lead just on registration alone. You typically have better turnout than the Democrats do. Don't take things for granted, I would say to Republicans, if the Democrats are going to have a lot more money. Andy Beshear had way more money than Daniel Cameron 2 years ago, and it made a difference.
Independent or no party voters are giving up their right to vote in a primary. Number one, do you think they always know that? Secondly, as that number grows, does the political pressure grow to allow independents to vote in primaries, which they're having to pay for anyway, sort of a gift to the political parties?
I think it would be fair to independent voters, and it would be better for our system if we let these people be heard in a primary. And increasingly, the primary matters as much, sometimes more than a general, because the primary is where the action happens. In so many parts of our state, they're very Republican or very Democratic. The primary is the general. I think it'd be better for our system if we let these folks vote as often as we have elections. To your point, they're paying for them. I don't see much impetus in the legislature to make that change. We've had straight party voting for a long time. We've had closed primaries for a long time. I think there's maybe one independent in the whole legislature. So that person isn't going to get this law passed, right? It's got to be D's and R's that come together to do it. So I don't see that happening imminently.
Because both parties, even with it being very lopsided control, have an interest, you think, in keeping it partisan?
Well, increasingly the primary matters more. Your average member of the legislature is more threatened in a primary than a general. And if you're the member who says, I want to open up this to primaries and bring in more centrist voters, you can get primary from the left or primary from the right? If the whole point is to bring in everybody, then the people who are more zealous on one side or the other are not going to like that. And they're the ones who are likelier to vote and likelier to write a check and volunteer and other things.
But essentially the government is holding these primaries for the political parties. Otherwise they'd have to do a caucus at their expense.
That's
right?
Literally true. These are functionally private organizations whose costs are being paid by the taxpayer.
Do you anticipate proposing any legislation or trying to defeat any legislation in the upcoming session?
Well, I hope I won't have to try to defeat anything. I've had to spend some capital on that before. Efforts to take away our voting rights, our improved election process. I think we're probably safe on that front. So right now I have two priorities. One is more funding for our election officials. I don't mean me, I'm not asking for anything, but for our county clerks. It's getting harder and harder to get volunteers to work the polls because we've not kept up with inflation. I'll give you an example. I was a poll worker 30 years ago when I was 19 and I was home from college. and I got paid $100. And that's the same thing that my home county pays today, 30 years later, $100. You can't get anyone to do anything for $100 anymore. You just can't. So we need to keep up with inflation. We have funding formulas in our law for election funding, and they were written in the 80s. And those dollar amounts are the same today that they were in the 80s when those laws were passed. You get, for example, 25 cents per voter. That's not enough. If you try to buy a candy bar today, it's $1.50. It was 25 cents when I was a kid in the 80s. Now it's $1.50. So we really need to index these funding formulas to inflation. So I'm working now over the interim to try to get that money in for our county clerks. Again, I'm not asking for it, but I want them to have it. The other thing that we're looking at is expanding our Safe at Home program to protect survivors of domestic abuse. It's been a real success. We just had a conference here in Lexington. We were granted this conference as a recognition of all we've done to expand our program. I'd like to have a more stable funding source for it. Right now, all we have is we get a tiny share of a larger fund that's funded by fines that are paid by bad guys that are convicted of violent crimes. But there's a lot of competition for that money. We'd like to have a stable funding source to make sure we can serve our constituencies. But what we're also looking at is expanding it beyond just survivors of domestic abuse and including, for example, police officers, possibly even elected officials, given all the political violence that we're seeing recently, and allow them to have some of the same confidentiality rights on their homes and their families that we have for survivors of domestic violence.
And that would mean that the public cannot access that information.
Yeah, there are certain things that the public has a right to know. They have a right to know to some extent where I live, because if I don't live here, I can't serve in my office. It's in the Constitution, right? So there are certain things that the public has a right to know. But to be a police officer, there's no reason the public needs to know where you live, right? And unfortunately, policing is getting to be more dangerous as well. So it's a discussion that we're having with legislators. We'll come back with recommendations. The last thing I would add is we're also going to ask again for the legislature to make it a crime, make it an offense at some level to impersonate an election official. We've seen this in other states. You saw that in the New Hampshire primary. Someone put out a robocall pretending to be Joe Biden and putting out false information to deter voters from voting in the New Hampshire primary. I don't want someone pretending to be me or a county clerk and putting out false information about our elections.
You recently won another civic-oriented award that was from Governing Magazine. Do you take pride in being honored in that way?
I do. So there's a verse in the Bible where Jesus says, a prophet's not without honor save in his own country. I do tend to get more attention from outside the state sometimes on things that we're doing, but I'm very proud to be included as Public Official of the Year.
You indicated last time you were here that you're likely to run for governor in 2027. Is that your plan as of now?
I wouldn't say that I have a plan. I would say I have a consideration I'm going through, and I haven't made a final decision, but I'm looking at it closely. I won't be on the ballot in 2026. If I run, it'll be in 2027.
And is there you said if you run, is there a chance that you would not seek an office in 2027?
Sure. Yeah, I'll be very practical about it. I'm a reformer. I really want to improve stuff. And there's plenty of jerks out there you can vote for if you just want someone to be a jerk. If you really want to improve housing in Kentucky and education in Kentucky and make things better for the next generation, then you've got someone who will fight for you. And if you don't want that, then just go pick somebody else.
Michael Adams, the Kentucky Secretary of State, thanks for coming.
Thanks,
we
Bill.
appreciate it.
You bet.
Stay with us. We'll be back on Kentucky Newsmakers in a moment. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers from WKYT. Fast-growing Madison County is now projected to have eclipsed 100,000 residents. The growth is apparent in Richmond, Berea, and in the unincorporated areas. The long and frustrating project to repave and repair I-75 is about over after local leaders were hit with complaints all summer long. The effort to destroy nerve agent at the Bluegrass Army Depot is also about wrapped up, but that touched off controversy when the local governments had to come up with a way to fund the 911 system that a federal program had long paid for. Reagan Taylor has been the Madison County Judge Executive since being elected in 2014, and he's joining us now. Judge, thanks for coming in. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
There was some rejoicing, I think, this week when the state announced that it just about wrapped up that almost $14 million repaving project. It was a long summer. At one point in a meeting, you called it a nightmare because of the frustrations people had with traffic.
It was very challenging, especially for those that were commuting, every day to work, whether it be people going to Georgetown, Scott County, Fayette County, or people commuting home. It was challenging all the way around.
What could the state have done better?
I personally think after being a part of this, I didn't deal with this. I wasn't elected when this happened 13 or 14 years ago, and so this was sort of my first time with it. I think that we have to prepare our community better from a logistical standpoint. I think that the state transportation cabinet needs to have some meetings, some planning meetings with us, and let's do this together. Let's partner together to make sure that it doesn't have a negative impact. We want great infrastructure. There's no question. Citizens deserve it and they want it. And sometimes you have some growing pains that you have to go through, but we really need to come together to plan better so that we can use the technologies that we have. We can use law enforcement for traffic control. We can create alternate routes. We can know timelines and positions that the repaving is going to be happening on the interstate, and so that we can communicate with our citizens to say, hey, if you're going at 7:30 in the morning, let's have traffic control on 25 so that we can not have so many people on the interstate.
Secretary of Transportation Jim Gray said that this had to be done, that it was a matter of safety and that the road was in a disrepair and deteriorating. You have said that it put so much traffic on some of the nearby roads, some of those county maintained, that will be an expense to you as well.
I think indirectly, I think it will, absolutely. I mean, when you have, tractor trailers that are going alternate routes and they're using subdivision streets and going across bridges and things like that aren't rated for possibly that to cross, I think that in time that you will indirectly. Now, would you ever be able to put an actual price tag on that? No. But a county road, a state road, a city street, it has a lifespan. And that lifespan is based on the number of traffic counts that are on that road. And so it has to, at some point, have an effect when you have that much traffic on other routes.
So it's your hope that lessons are learned from this past few months.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The project to destroy the nerve agent at the Bluegrass Army Depot nears an end. The nerve agent is gone. How much of a game changer is that for Madison County?
It is huge, and it's not just Madison County. You had 10 CSEP counties, so
yes.
There was a lot of federal funding over the last 30 years that have been pushed into our community that has helped save the local governments and the taxpayers' money, because we're I say all the time, we're spending 350 million people's tax money when it's coming from the federal government, and it's not all just our local tax base.
Did that ever keep you up at night, knowing that nerve agent was there? Your predecessor told me that while there were all these plans, that it would have been unrealistic, in all likelihood, to do a mass-scale evacuation if there had ever been a major incident.
It would have, but I think that I felt very confident in the contractors, Bechtel Parsons, Aqua, all the preparedness and part of those CSEP dollars went into. They've done years of trainings and exercises there was never one night that I lost sleep because I was worried about it. Some of the numbers and the data that they kept on just our workforce that was out there and people not being down and out of work because of accidents and things like that was remarkable. Some of those statistics were hard to even believe, the number of man hours. And so we had a wonderful team out there that it was safety first. Yeah. And did a wonderful job getting rid of and destroying the chemical weapons.
And no longer a threat.
No longer a threat.
Major league.
That's right. But there is some challenges, Bill.
Well, and let's talk about that. The federal CSEP program long paid for the county's 911 system and the emergency communications. With that gone, there was obviously some tension about how to move forward for 911. I think it's fair to say that you and Richmond leaders got a little bit cross at times in how to proceed with that, and you now say there's a plan worked out.
Yeah, so, we put together a task force. All three governments, Berea, Richmond, and the fiscal court, put together a task force to create a plan. They presented that plan. We thought everybody was obviously on board with it. Everybody agreed to it. I think we had a special call meeting to kind of lay it all out there and put the facts out there to prove. I think the fiscal court kind of got a little bit of a bad rap. There were some political pressures that came up, and which is fine. It's everybody's prerogative. But as long as I'm county judge, we're going to have the facts, and we're going to put the facts out there, and we're going to be transparent. I think we showed that in that special call meeting that day, and it was ultimately everybody's decision to do that. When the political pressures came, that's when the pushback came, and so at that point we just decided to back up and hey, let's sort of say, hey, everybody can decide how they want to collect a fee if they want to collect a fee.
Well, Richmond decided apparently to write a check.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if they're in the financial position to do that from
good
funds,
for them. Yes, that's right.
But if not, then maybe they come up with a.
Unfortunately, the county's not able to do that.
So you think going forward, though, 911, that situation will be handled?
It will, yes. There's no doubts there. Each entity will be responsible for the use of 911, the number of calls that comes from their jurisdictions, and so that's how that the shortfall in funds will be collected.
Most of the calls come from the city of Richmond?
Yes. So if you use a full year's numbers, the last numbers was 56% of the calls come out of the city of Richmond, 24% come out of the county, the unincorporated limits, and then 20% comes out of Berea.
You have said in your capacity in Richmond at the courthouse, as well as leading the Kentucky Association of Counties and serving on their board, that local jails are a huge financial burden on counties. That continues to be the case. It
is, and it's not just a certain number of counties, it's all counties. The jail situation and counties being responsible, pre-adjudication is just a drag on counties' budgets. For us, we out of the general fund put about $4 million a year into the jail to make the budget balance. My biggest issue with it is that these are state charges. Individuals that are going to jail, they're not breaking a county ordinance. They're not breaking necessarily a city law. And if they are, I'll be glad to pay for those. But to put all that burden on the local communities and fiscal courts, to me is wrong. Through KCO, obviously we have a wonderful association in our Commonwealth of Kentucky. Through Kentucky Association of Counties, we have a wonderful leader in Jim Henderson and Shelley Hampton, our advocacy team. So very proud of them. But that is going to be our number one focus this year on legislation, to try to get some funding to help counties.
There's a multi-county agreement for a county industrial park, and that is in cooperation with some other counties and with the city of Berea, right? Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, we're so excited about that. This is a positive one, Bill. We collaborated with Scott County, Fayette County, Berea, even early on Richmond and Georgetown was a part of it. And we were looking to do regionalism for 11 years pretty much since I've been county judge. Through Commerce Lexington, our Bluegrass Alliance group, we talked about regionalism. We talked about partnerships and doing things together because citizens don't know where county lines start and stop or city limits start and stop. And so my friend Mayor Fraley always says a rising tide lifts all boats. And so we had an opportunity over the last couple of years to work together with those 5 entities to create a regional partnership. Richmond and Georgetown, which is fine. They chose that they weren't ready for that yet, and so. But Berea, Commerce, or Lexington, Fayette Urban County Government, Scott County, and Madison County Fiscal Court decided to keep it going. So we've created since last December approximately the Central Kentucky Business Park Authority. And so we have some really good opportunities in Madison County right now where we're looking at some growth areas and to be able to put in some business parks and to be able to grow our tax base. You
said people don't know boundaries. Do you consider merged government in Madison County?
I think that it would be beneficial for a lot of communities when you get to a certain size in the Commonwealth of Kentucky to look into it. Not every shoe fits, so it might not work everywhere, but I think that if communities are going to be able to provide the services and the demands that the citizens deserve and desire and want, then I think that you have to think outside the box sometimes. We have to get out of our own little kingdoms and truly do what is best for our citizens, to run efficient governments, to not duplicate services, to be able to keep the tax bases low.
We noted the population of Madison County has topped 100,000 at this point. Is there a strain between those who want a more urban setting and those who want to respect the agricultural history that exists there?
Yeah, I do. There is some things on social media that come out about that. You have groups that I think one way, but when you really look into it, it's really another. There was some things going on in the community, and again, I like to go back to the facts. We used our GIS department to sort of get a concept of how much land has been used in Madison County for different zones, whether it be residential, multifamily, commercial, industrial. And so when we looked at our entire county, and this has been since 1776, right, Bill? Because that's when Madison County was formed. 80%, a little over 80% of our county is still agriculture.
Yeah. I need a quick answer on this. Do you plan to run for re-election in 2026?
Yes, sir. That is the plan. It's very excited. It's been an honor to serve. We've done some great things. I have a wonderful team. It starts with the team that you surround yourself and the people you surround yourself with. Before I came here today, I had a department head meeting, and I'm so proud to sit around a table in there and plan for our community.
Reagan Taylor, the Madison County Judge Executive, thanks for coming. We appreciate it.
Appreciate you, Bill.
We'll wrap up Kentucky Newsmakers in a moment. We appreciate you being with us for this edition of Kentucky Newsmakers. Former State Auditor Mike Harmon will be one of our guests next week. He's written a new book, is involved in some advocacy, and has some thoughts about what it's like to be outside looking in at politics. That is Kentucky Newsmakers for this week. Thank you for joining us, and you make it a good week ahead.